Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the UCF Football Updates podcast, your go to source for all things Knights football. Today, we have a very special guest joining the show, former UCF linebacker Troy Gray. Troy was a force on the field during his 4 years at UCF, playing in over 50 games, racking up nearly 200 career tackles, 19 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. He made a huge impact on the Knights defense, and today we get to hear about his story firsthand. Troy has also recently launched a new business called Tag Team Works, a platform that is dedicated to helping athletes transition from sports to professional careers. And we'll get into that a little bit later today. All very important stuff. But first off, Troy, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Appreciate you, my man. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm awesome to be on your platform. Been following it for some years now. Just seeing the growth that you've had, but also just putting UCF out there on the social media map has been big. So I appreciate you for having me and excited to jump into it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that too. I mean, obviously, going back to my days in school, watching you guys play and how you helped, mold UCF and what it is today. So I appreciate that you have some love for the channel. So yeah, I mean, I just want to get right into it. We were talking a little bit before the show started about how, you grew up in Georgia, you played high school ball in Georgia, obviously. And, there's a lot of good programs there. And, coming out of high school, you had a lot of offers. I was looking at your offer sheet, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State. At that time when you were getting recruited, UCF wasn't exactly a top tier program, or, when guys had SEC offers like you did, they're likely choosing the SEC over UCF. So what ultimately sold you and convinced you to go to UCF over some of those big offers that you had?
Yeah, for sure. So it's actually the process is different, man. A lot different now than it is back then. Handwritten cards. You got a lot of coaches pulling up to you at the school, but for my process, I was a sophomore, junior, and that's when things really started to pick up in terms of playing ball. And coaches started to show up. I played with a guy, Darren Waller, who played for the Raiders, Giants.
Yeah.
So between him and I and a couple other players on the team, we started to really get some traction coming out to our school. Grew up, northwest of Atlanta, North Cobb High School. Shout out to North Cobb, Cobb County. A lot of good ball players that came out of there as well. But the biggest thing for me is I started to get a lot of offers. And one thing I was focused on, and one thing I want to be transparent and honest about because I feel like this is a good place to do it is, I was really just focused on ball, football, and baseball. My grades started to slip. And with my grades starting to slip, that caused a lot of schools to kind of take a back seat in kind of pursuing me. So a lot more offers could have hit the table, but some of those changes kind of helped me to really figure out where I wanted to go. And so a couple of schools that stuck around and continued to recruit me, Georgia Southern, out in Statesboro, UCF being another one, Virginia being another one, Kentucky as well. But through that process of actually going on my official visits, going out to the schools, Georgia Southern was a great time. Loved the coaching staff. Monken was out there at the time. Got to take a tour. It was all season, so I didn't get to see a game. But with that, I was sitting with Monken in the office, and Coach Key from UCF gave me a call, Brent Key, and was like, "Hey, man, we want to have you come out for an official visit next week. Can you come out?" And Monken was like, "No, man, you need to go ahead and commit now. This is your spot." And as soon as I stepped on the campus at UCF, like hands down, that was my spot to go. Meeting the coaching staff, meeting with the players, seeing the facilities at the time. Palm trees, didn't have that in Georgia. So I'm like, this is the place for me. And at the time, again, UCF wasn't really, huge on the map. Just had a recent win against Georgia in the Liberty Bowl. So, hearing some of the changes and the potential, some of the whispers of potential new conferences, that really helped me to make my decision to go over to UCF.
funny how I hear this from a lot of guys that, former UCF players that I bring on the podcast, is they say the campus really convinced them, to come, or was a big part of it. So I wonder, like, how much, that makes sense. But like, when you like, does the stadium, when you see that, like, you're talking about the whole campus as a whole, which makes sense. It's a beautiful campus, it's modern and all that. But like, when you're looking at that stadium that holds 45K, and then you're at like Ole Miss or Kentucky that's holding 80, 90, and the atmosphere just is different. Did that, matter to you at all? Or are you just like, damn, this campus is awesome. Like, I don't really care. It's still a good enough stadium, or was that not really a factor for you?
Yeah, man. I mean, for the stadium, for the fans and everybody behind you, I feel like that's big for them. Going and seeing some of these massive stadiums, hundreds of thousands of people. I remember going out to Penn State when we played whiteout game, up
Mm-hmm.
my junior year, and I'm like, whoa, this is massive. But the biggest thing for me, and I think for a lot of the guys, is like what happens between the lines. Everything kind of tunes out once you actually step on the field. So when, I stepped into the stadium, saw, you know, all the stands, the banners, like it was awesome, but I just couldn't wait to, kind of step foot on the field and get to it.
Yeah, no doubt. So your freshman year is 2011. At that point, like you said, UCF is coming arguably off their best year in history at that point. They had won their first ever bowl game, beat Georgia, which, obviously Georgia was down, but they had AJ Green that year. I mean, it was
Mhm.
still a big win. And they're coming in after a 10-win season, a bowl win, their first ever, and a top 25, their first ever top 25 ranking. So there was a lot of expectations going into that 2011 year. And I'll never forget. So 2011 was my senior year. So, I'm coming off a high off that big season. And then we start out, whatever, we beat the FCS school. Then we beat the brakes off of Boston College, which I'm thinking, oh man, that was even to that point, Boston College, not that they're a powerhouse, but we hadn't had too many Power Five wins at that point in time, or BCS wins, whatever you want to call them back then. And beating Boston College 30-3, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be another great season. Godfrey's developing all this stuff, and then it kind of, the season kind of slips off the rails. We lose to FIU, which that was like a shocker. I was like, whoa, what happened? We're not expecting to lose to FIU. So, that's your freshman year. You guys beat BC at home in front of a packed house. I'll never forget. It was rocking there in the bounce house. What kind of happened early on that season that really changed from that BC win, winning 30-3, and all of a sudden you lose back-to-back games to FIU, BYU? And I know that's bringing you back a long time, but do you kind of remember the dynamics and like what happened there?
Yeah, man. Yeah, taking me down memory lane because yeah, the first game I think it was against Charleston Southern.
Yep, yep.
Actually got some play time towards the end of that game. Me and TP were able to jump in there, and then Boston College, I was playing mostly on special teams. But I remember the special teams because I was up against Luke Kuechly, pretty
Mm,
much the whole game, off or punt team, punt return. So I remember that game vividly. And then, when it comes to some internal changes, and as the season gets underway, you get some losses. Um, I think the trajectory and how it changed just with the team is week in and week out. Uh, you know, ball happens. You come in with a good game plan. At the end of the day, once you step on the field, you got to execute that game plan. And for us, we had some good wins, some close games that
yeah.
year. Being out on the road, out of UTEP, like we've, missed the mark in a couple of areas. Like a very close game. If I can remember against Southern Miss at Southern Miss, I
Yep.
remember the crowd was rocking, and we had a change with Godfrey, and that was I think Bortles' first game
Bortles. Yeah.
in, and we had some big plays. Playing as a true freshman, everything was moving at 100 miles per hour around me, not only on the field, but off the field as well. So with younger squad, with changes on the depth chart, I know we had some injuries as well. Like that's where you see the season start to change as well. But when
Right.
that season to change. It's like for us, let's take the good from the season and start building on that. Because halfway through the season, it was kind of written on the wall.
Right.
We were going to finish up. So
Yeah, I want to ask you a couple more questions about this season before we move on into two really great seasons, the 12 and 13. But I am curious about two other things. One being, I mean, you as a true freshman, your final kind of 9 games there, you started and at an outside linebacker. I know you said you played a lot on special teams, but you were getting a lot of play your true freshman year at linebacker, and you finished with 30 tackles, 3.5 tackles for a loss. I mean, that's a damn good season for anyone and all, but especially for a true freshman. What do you think? And I think back then, before like the transfer portal and all this stuff, like freshmen generally were redshirting. What kind of was the difference for you? Were you able to see the field right away, especially when you had some really good linebackers in your linebacker room, like I mean, there was just legends from that year, like Terrence Plummer, for example, was on that. I mean, did he help you kind of with that maturity and that development? And how were you able to kind of see the field as a true freshman, especially under a guy like George O'Leary, who I feel like is always going to play that older, more mature dude?
yeah, for sure. Funny thing is, coming out of high school, again, we talked about the offers. We talked about, that transition into coming to UCF, but I was always an undersized linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
I think about a guy like Rennie Curran, who was over at UGA, was somebody who I looked up to in terms of being, 6 foot, 6'1", just a little over 200 plus pounds, didn't really transfer from what's on the paper, but being an undersized guy, kind of always had that mentality. When I stepped into UCF, I was thinking, all right, it's my time, second string, first string, let me, at least get a shot on the field. Special teams, I'm cool with that as a true freshman. But, when I came in, I was sitting around fourth string, fifth string, getting a handful of plays during practice.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and when I got those handful of plays, I tried to maximize that to the best of my ability. And, again, having guys like Terrence or TP, having guys like Josh Lynham at the time, Lowe Robinson. He played for a while. He was in his senior year. Those guys, they put their arms around me. And, we go day in and day out, the hustle, the grind. But when we got into the film room, TP, Josh Lynham and we break down film. We'd go out to the field. We would run through our plays, through our defense, through everything with a fine tooth comb. So the throughout fall ball, getting into the season, slowly but surely going from like fourth, fifth to getting a shot at third string to a handful of injuries coming in to being able to be in the mix once we got into the season through special teams, giving you effort, being able to show up where you can. And then I think my first game, BYU, was the first time that I had my actual start. And going out to Utah, being in a huge stadium, I don't know, 60, 65,000 up in the mountains, could barely breathe because of the elevation. That was my first shot. And I remember, our first play, I ran past the running back. Like I was excited playing on ESPN. I see the hole open wide, and I'm like, there's the running back. Shoom, flew right past him, still got back in on the tackle. But going into the rest of that season, like I leaned on my linebacker crew a lot. They were very big in terms of just keeping me uplifted, but also pushing against each other because we all wanted to be on the field. Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, we all wanted to make sure we hit the field. So
Thanks a lot. Yeah. One question I want to ask from that season. I know you're, defensive guy, but I say this, I've said this a bunch of times on my page, like Jeff Godfrey is probably my favorite UCF football player. I just loved like when he committed, he talked about how like he had offers from Miami, Florida State, Florida. He's like, I want to build something at UCF. And I always respected that about him. And comes in freshman year, crushes it, wins the bowl game, all that stuff. Then sophomore year, expectations for him are sky high. And all of a sudden you start to see, this thing where it's Godfrey, then it's Godfrey and Bortles. Bortles is coming in halftime or they're switching. series and things like that. What ultimately happened there? Because like Godfrey definitely didn't play as well as his freshman year, but it was weird, like just all of a sudden to see kind of Bortles, a freshman at the time, just kind of come in and supplant him. I remember thinking at the time it was a mistake, but obviously, clearly O'Leary made the right decision. There's no doubt about it. But like, what was happening there? Was it just Godfrey not playing well in like games and practice, or was it just Bortles was just playing lights out in practice and just showed enough for us like, hey, we got to get this guy on the field?
Yeah, yeah, man. And you know, being on the defensive side, I mean, we practice against them all day, every day. We
Yeah.
split time between us working with, twos, threes. And, through that season, I know Godfrey stepping in, played some good ball, made some good plays.
Mm-hmm.
Bortles been there as well. And whether that's, switching behind the scenes during practice and then getting that opportunity, once somebody gets that opportunity and they start to show some promise and they continue to keep that, like that's where you start to see opportunities open up. And I think that's where that happened for Bortles. Not anything against what Jeff did, what Jeff has done in the past, but at the end of the day, when you step on the field, like the player who's going to continue to move the team forward and make plays that's who's going to continue to play. So I don't know the fine two details about reason why, but I mean, you see what it is with Bortles. He continued to progress throughout that year. Godfrey making that switch over, the receiver. He was still able to use his skills, be able to step up and contribute to the team. So, still some packages in there where he was able to sling the rock.
Yeah, for sure. And then it ended up becoming a really good wide receiver for UCF. So that's always really cool. So I want to jump into the next season. I don't have too much on the 2012 season. Obviously, good year for UCF. But one thing, and I feel like, there's something, you could, really talk about. And I feel like a lot of UCF players can relate to this is Tulsa, man. Like, I'll tell you, it doesn't matter what conference we've been in, when it is, it's like they have our number. I don't know how to describe it. That year, they beat us in the regular season by a couple points. Then we go play them in the Conference USA Championship and lose again. And you've seen it through Heupel, Malzahn. They just beat us for whatever reason. And you hear it in sports, the whole term like they have our number. Is that like a real thing? Did they just have our number, or what was it? Because that, granted, obviously that 2012 team was really good. They won the conference championship, but I've seen Tulsa teams with 2-3 wins beat us. So, and I've heard some guys say that they're usually better than the record indicates. They always have some dogs on the team, whatever. But what is it? Do they have our number, or what is it with us and not being able to beat Tulsa?
Man, I don't know what's in the water in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but if I can bottle some of that up, yeah, man. Like when you talk about somebody, team having your number, or just knowing what works and what works well. I mean, there wasn't anything, going into the game plan that stood out that said, man, these are some dogs. They're gonna dog walk you. Like there was nothing. You knew the players, the squad that they had. I mean, the quarterback at that time, I think 2012. I mean, he looked like Cam Newton sitting in the pocket. I think he was like 6'6", 250 pounds, and then the running back at the time was somewhere around 6'1", 250, 260 toting the
True.
rock. So, when you're going against, a squad who they're a well-oiled machine, and us is a well-oiled machine as well. But going into those games, I mean, you got the full intent and going out there and winning, and whether it's just turnovers or not being able to convert once we get on the field, like certain things just came up at the most inopportune times. I remember when I think it was in the conference championship, like one of the punts coming down the sideline, touchdown. We, yeah, I do not like Tulsa. Golden Hurricanes erase it off the map. But I will say, man, I will say, like, I love playing against Tulsa, man. They because you knew it was going to be a hard-nosed football game. It wasn't going to be, hey, we're going to just air it out the whole game, or we're not just going to run the whole game. They mixed it up a lot, and they had a tight end that would either be on the line, or he would be in the backfield, or he'd be flexed out. and they were always solid. So you had different pieces of the puzzle that they were able to move around, and going back to back, playing them and losing them to them before the conference championship, and then going to Tulsa to play out there, and then having another loss is just, it's tough. And they got our number, man, and hopefully some things change.
Listen, things change if we even ever play them again. Hopefully, we get a couple more rounds with them. But I want to go into that 2013 season, which I think to this day might be the most fun UCF. I mean, 2017, speaks for itself, but 2013 might be the most fun season, just like the cardiac nights and just, it was so unexpected, kind of what happened there. But I want to talk about that. Like, obviously, going to the year, coming off that 2012 year, which was obviously a very very solid year in 2012. Coming in 2013, you had a quarterback in Bortles. You didn't know he was going to end up being a top 5 draft pick, but you knew you had a good quarterback. You knew you had pieces there. But looking at it, it was you transition into the American. So you take a step up from Conference USA into the American, which was supposed to be the Big East, but even when the Big East fell apart, you still had Louisville, you had USF, you had Rutgers, you had some teams you hadn't played before. And then you're looking at the non-conference schedule. It's like we got to play Penn State in Pennsylvania, and you got to play South Carolina, who was, preseason ranked that year. So you're looking at it while the expectations might be pretty high, but at the same time, it's like crap. We're moving into a much better conference. We got a really tough schedule. Going into that year, did you guys know you had something special brewing, or like was the whole kind of 12-1 kind of just kind of happened as it happened, or were you kind of going that year like this could be a really special year?
Yeah, man. I mean, coming out of 2012, getting a bowl win, haven't been so bowl since against the 2010 season against Georgia. So being able to have that opportunity to get a nice win, to get that momentum, knowing that we're going into a new conference, obviously expectations are high when you're moving into a new conference. And not only moving into a new conference, but you also have new opponents that are on the schedule that you either haven't played before, or the preseason rankings. And so your mentality definitely has to switch. The ability when you step on the field, you're not playing against Conference USA. You're not playing Conference USA. You're playing Big East ball at that point.
Right.
So going into that season, I know mentality wise for a lot of the guys, and even from our coaches, it was one game at a time. Like you don't look past this week. Who is in front of you is who you have. And so going into each and every single game, that was a mentality. And every time we play a game, it was like, we've got one more game. We got one more game. Don't worry about the end results. Don't worry about the final whistle. And that's how we played. And that's how we practice. I feel like 2013, 2012, 2013, those were some of the most grueling practices, but it made the game so much easier. Like however many periods we would have in practice, whether we had 12 or 24, you got into a game, you're like, we got 4 quarters. Like, let's just get from one quarter to the next quarter to the next quarter. And if we do what we've been taught and what we've practiced, like there's no doubt at the end of the game, we're going to be where we want to be. So I think that was a big mental switch going into a new conference. And then as always, you got people, the outside kind of looking in, who give you that, kind of that label of, y'all aren't going to do anything. You aren't going to be able to, live up to the 10-4, record that you've had in the past. It's a new conference, better teams. You got South Carolina, you got Louisville with Bridgewater, you got Penn State. You're going to Penn State. Y'all, you really think that you're going to be able to go out there and compete? And the answer every single time is 100%. Yeah, of course. So there you go. There you go.
Oh, okay. Go, no, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a mentality like going into the year, man. It was no matter what, like it's one game at a time, and we take that one step forward. And once you get to the end of the season, like we'll be where we want to be. So a lot of good games throughout that season, and the cardiac nights
Cardiac
alive
nights.
well.
Yeah, and it's you start off the season, you beat Akron, you beat FIU, but then boom, right in week 3 you get this big test. You got to go to Happy Valley, you got to play Penn State, and they were a little down that year. Not like what we've seen these last couple of years of Penn State, but like talk about that environment. Like, was there any intimidation? You got 90,000 plus Penn State fans there. Did you go into that game like expecting to be competitive and ultimately win, and just kind of talk about that environment? Because to that point, at least in your UCF career, 11 and 12, there hadn't been a road game to the level of a Penn State, like a blue blood kind of opponent. Like you said, no disrespect to Conference USA or some of the American, but like some of these stadiums are 30-40,000 at most. So you go to Penn State, it has nearly 100K. What was that like?
Yeah, man. It was an experience. It's because I mean you hear about it all the time. Huge stadiums.
Yeah.
At the time, college football, NCAA was still out. So like, when you're playing the game, you see the meter that's going side to side when you're trying to kick a field goal. Like that's what it felt like when you walked in there. Like the only big game prior to that big stadium that we went into was Ohio State against Braxton Miller. And I remember stepping into that
That's right.
stadium and 70,000 plus. I heard a trumpet, like it was just one trumpet by itself as we're doing a walkthrough, and it sounded like there was about 15. And I said, okay, this is going to be loud. It's going to be a game that's rocking. But when we stepped into Penn State and we saw, I remember seeing how big that stadium was and looking at the scoreboard, and the scoreboard looking like it's 3 or 4 stories tall. Um, I said, I can't imagine what it's going to be like when this is filled up. Not only when it's filled up, but it's a whiteout game. Um, so it was cool to think about that. But as I said, like the biggest thing is between the lines. That's what you have to worry about. All the noise, it kind of gets drowned out once you step onto the field. But going in there, full intent. We're going in there to win. This is a statement game. FIU Akron, awesome. Got the wins, starting off the season 2-0, making the trip up there and feeling really good about the squad that we had. Like we started to have momentum. Now we're at 3 games plus that we've gone straight winning from 2012 to kicking off the new season out of conference games. But this is a big test. We get this win. Now everybody's really talking. But again, it's the next game, the next win that we had to get. And going in there, uh, man, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, especially when you get on the goal line. You got people yelling all types of good stuff about you. When you're in that environment, man, it was an exciting game.
Yeah, UCF games and that year and really all time. But then so then at that point, we're 3-0. We drop a tough game to South Carolina, which ends up being the only loss of the year. Obviously, they have Jadeveon Clowney, who ends up being the number 1 pick, but hell of a game there. But I want to get into that Louisville game because for me, at that point, we're 4-1 heading into Louisville, and they're top 10. They're number 8 in the country. They're undefeated. You're going into Louisville, and at that point, the AAC for that 1 year had the automatic bid, and you're feeling like essentially this is a must win. Like, there's not going to be a conference championship game that year. So you probably have to go undefeated in the conference or at worst 7-1. So you really don't want to drop this game. And that game, like you said, Teddy Bridgewater, it's in Louisville. A lot of basically expectation that Louisville is going to win that game. And it starts out like on script. I remember Louisville went up, I think 28-7. It's getting later in the third quarter, and you're thinking this is not going to happen. But all of a sudden, we get a fumble and we start coming back. Talk a little bit about that game. Did you guys ever lose confidence, or did you ever felt like the moment got too big? And what kind of propelled that comeback? Because to that point, Louisville was firing in all cylinders. I mean, they're up 3 touchdowns in the second half. It doesn't look like it's going to happen, especially on the road. How are you guys able to muster that comeback? Because I think to this day, that's probably the best comeback or one of the best comebacks in UCF history.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was a good game, man. Like kicking off, coming in, you got a lot of energy. You got tough losses, but when you come into that stadium, in the squad that they had, not only with Bridgewater defensively, wide receivers, the three-headed monster in the backfield, um,
Then
you
Devontae Parker too, right? I think.
Devontae Parker
Yeah.
was over there. Piron or Sonoris Perry, like
Hmm.
they just had a couple of different backs offensively. They were firing on all cylinders, man. And being down 28-7, like I remember coming to the sideline and all our coaches talked about was just, hey, we just need one stop. And we would get that stop, we'd come off the field, coach, we just need one stop. And it was just series by series by series. It was, hey, we know what our offense can do. Let's give them that opportunity to go out there on the field and make some plays happen. And so when we'd come off the field after every stop, hey, one more stop. And then slowly we just started creeping. And our coaches don't look at the scoreboard. Don't worry about that. Let's get to the game plan. Let's talk about what we need to fix. Let's make the change. One more stop. And that was just the mindset, going into the end of that game. Because again, as you said, you're in the third quarter. You're seeing the scoreboard and you kind of start seeing like, okay, well, what's going to happen after this game if we don't have this win? We've already got one loss. And that's all in the back of your head. But front and foremost, your coaches are just telling you, just get one more stop. And if you do that, your offense will take care of you. And they did. They showed up. And there was no doubt in my mind that they would. And we continue to do that throughout the game. And man, seeing Godfrey catch that touchdown at the end of the game, man.
Silence their crowd so much, man. That was such a. I mean, it's like it's crazy how it's kind of full circle because like he gets basically benched from being a starting QB when what QB wants to be benched and then move positions, but ended up making arguably one of the most important legendary catches in UCF history.
Yeah, man. That's yeah, I check that game out still every now and again just to see, that comeback. Because we've had some comebacks in the past. I mean,
Yeah,
probably is that whole year we had games where it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like, okay, how are we gonna come out on top? And sure enough, like that was just a testament. That was another game where you walk into a stadium, you walk into a place where everybody sees you as an underdog, and how you show up, once the game is over with is it's a testament to like our team and what we were able to do, man. So great game.
100%. Great game, great year. It's funny you had mentioned that like, what the offense that year for UCF could do. But I feel like the offense gets a lot of hype from that season. Like, you had Charlie Taft, the offensive coordinator, who, historically under O'Leary, the offenses weren't like great. It was always known for hard-nosed defenses, right? Which obviously you can attest to. And the offense was obviously significantly better that year. There was a ton of NFL talent there. But I always, the defense that year was really, really good. I mean, you look at the scores, and I know the points aren't everything, but like, you only gave up over 20 points 5 times all year, and really only 4 times during the regular season. That one of them was against in that Baylor game when they were scoring like 70 points a game, so that's okay. But the other ones, you were really, I mean, a lot of games here I'm seeing like you had a shutout, only give 7 points, 17, 17, 17, 13. So and the defense that year was really, I think the offense, like, gets a lot of credit, but the defense had, Terrence Plummer and Jacoby Glenn, yourself, Thomas Niles, Miles Pace, a lot of these guys that were, really, really good players. Talk about how important the defense was that year to kind of keeping everything together, because there's some games where the offense, had some duds like SMU, even the Houston game where it wasn't scoring like they were in other games. So talk a little bit about that defense that year.
Yeah, man. Hard nosed ball. O'Leary being defensive guy, and our DC at the time, Coach Fleming, and my linebacker coach at the time, Coach Summers. We had Lorenzini. We had a lot of great coaches that led the way. That set the standard, and they set the standard very high. And just thinking about to some of the practices that we've had, some of the film studies that we would go into and how in depth that you would get to it, man. We had some ballers on defense. TP being at middle linebacker, we had Sean Mag, who would rotate in at Sam between myself and being at Will, Clayton Geathers, Brandon Alexander, Jacoby Glenn, J.O. Jordan knows rights, like, and then
Yeah.
on the D line, you got E.J. Dunston, Thomas Niles, Gerald Lamea. Like, we had some guys that would run through a wall for anybody on that team, anybody on that defense, and that was the way we practiced. That was the way that we played, film study. So I feel like that year we had the mindset of nobody was going into the end zone. Like, we would take a look at film day in and day out. We would take a look at, the stats on where we sit defensively, in the whole nation. And we had goals to not only just be in the top, but be number one. And if you have that mentality going into every single game, that if you prevent them from scoring, then how are they going to win? And if offense can't get in the end zone, then we got to find a way to score. But we knew what we had, the offensive weapons, with Speedy, with Brashad, with Bortles and Stanback, as well as Storm Johnson in the backfield, and our offensive line just preventing anybody from touching Bortles. Is like, if we keep them out of the end zone, that's all we need to do. And that was the mentality, like, going into that year, outside of just, one game at a time, one game, one snap at a time, one series at a time, keep them from out of the end zone, and some good things will happen.
Year caps off with the Baylor game. We get our first ever, big bowl game, the Fiesta Bowl, really special way to, cap off that season. But going into that game, I mean, talk about, the media and whoever writing UCF off. I mean, I think the spread was something like Baylor was favored by somewhere 17 to 20. I remember watching all of the bowl season kind of pre-hype, and every ESPN analyst selected Baylor, 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 and for good reason. Baylor was very very good that year. I mean, I remember talking about, like, when I say they averaged 70 points a game, I'm only half kidding. I mean, I was looking at their schedule. Over they scored 59 or more points 6 times that year, including 4 games where they put up 70 plus, which is just ridiculous. I mean, they beat Iowa State 71-7 that year. They beat West Virginia 73-42. So just ridiculous scores they were putting up. But going to that game, obviously, I think the fan base had confidence, but you weren't sure, because at that time, you'd beaten Penn State, but this Baylor team was on a different level, presumably, and all the media was writing us off. And then we start out the game 14-0, and that was like, oh shit, something's happening here. Did your guys' confidence build? Like, did you have a lot of confidence going into that game? And then when you got off to that quick 14-0 lead, how much confidence did you have? And then you played a big role. You had 7 tackles in that game, and I remember the defense made some really big stops. And if you think about it, even though they scored 42, that was probably below their season average. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, just going into, that game, being excited, being able to get that bid, first time that we were able to be in that position, and having that shot. And, when they started talking, okay, it's going to be Baylor, all the points that they put up, they got a good back, they've got a good quarterback, they've got some wide receivers, they got monsters on defense and offensive line, and all the narratives in the pictures painted was, the David against Goliath. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you were gonna go in and play this team, and it was good enough that you got there. But, our mentality, seeing all of the stuff on TV or news articles, or when we're talking to the press, like, our goal and our mindset was, we step on that field, we win that game, we take it step by step, series by series, quarter at a time. And we play all 4 quarters to the best of our ability and to what we know we're capable of, then there's no doubt that we'll end up where we need to be. So, when the TVs will come on and, hey, Baylor's playing against UCF, click, cut it off. News articles, hey, did y'all, somebody in class or, somebody reaching out, hey, did you see what they were saying about you? Don't care about it. So I mean, we were truly tunnel vision, had the blinders on going into that game and being able to not just say we had the opportunity to be there, but show everybody the reason why we should be there and let that show on the field. And that was what we did going into that game. We knew Baylor ran a high tempo, fast paced offense where I think it was anywhere between like 17 seconds and 20 seconds that they were snapping the ball. And that was from the ball being down to when they were running their next play. So going into practice and preparing for that game, because you had a little bit of time, it wasn't, week to week where you were getting ready for your next game. We had, a couple of weeks before we met them in the Fiesta Bowl, but we were running nonstop at practice. We were running plays. We'd have one practice squad that would run a play, and the second practice squad would be on the sideline ready just to jump in so we can imitate what they were doing. And it was just fast paced. And that's how I feel like we were able to get conditioned for what they were running. Being able to pick up some of their tendencies defensively, see what they were going to do on offense, and then being able to prepare. And then once we jump out on that 14-0 start, the confidence continues to build. But when you start thinking about teams and like being front runners, like that wasn't the mentality at all. It was like, okay, well, we got 14 up on them. Let's continue to keep playing good ball, good defense. And then slowly starting to chip away and a little back and forth that we had through the game. Some big plays. I know Speedy had a couple of big balls that he was able to get touchdowns on that game. And Josh Reese, I remember just looking down the sideline and seeing him blasting people on defense as Speedy's on his way into the end zone. So that's where you started to see, like, we weren't just playing one at a time. Everybody was playing for each other. Offense playing for defense, defense playing for offense, special teams, full tilt, everybody from kicking team to punt. We were all there working for each other, man, and it was a really special game because it was us against the world, essentially, and that's how I felt going in there. But we knew we had our brothers behind us, and as long as you got that, we knew we were gonna come out on top.
Special season or it's top 2 season in UCF football history, and it was a lot of fun. Great way. It was really, made you, all of us proud to be UCF fans and wear the black and gold. So great way to end the season. That was awesome that you were a big part of that run. Obviously, next year still a solid year. A lot of people graduated. You finished with another AAC championship. Unfortunately, losing the bowl game to, I think that was Jacoby Brissett, right? Was on NC State then. But I wanted to kind of get more into present. So after that year you graduate, did you catch us up to a little what you've been up to? Did you try to make an NFL run or maybe like a CFL, and then kind of where did your career lead to from there?
Yeah. So after I graduated, the goal was, as always, to get to the next level. I had some conversations with some Canadian teams, some CFL teams. I had some conversations with some NFL teams once the season concluded, and whether that was talks about undrafted free agent or just getting invited to a camp. And even through all of that, didn't get the opportunity to move on to the next level. Tried some tryouts and going to a couple of mini camps for some Canadian teams. But at the end of the day, like, whether it was a little too undersized to be linebacker or not too quick to be a DB, I was like, hey, I'm going to continue to chip away. But at the same time, as soon as I graduated, like, I needed to find a way to get some income. Never had a job in my life. Never, the only job I had was umpire when I was in high school for t-ball. Like I got more arguments from the parents than I did from anybody playing football at UCF, and so I didn't know what the next step looked like for me. So didn't go to the league. Ended up, you know, just real quick. So yeah, after I graduated, didn't get the opportunity to continue playing ball. And, for, the next year or two, like I was still, grinding, doing my training, still going to mini camps, still going to different tryouts here in Orlando because I stayed here in Orlando, and started working in a sales role while I was actually, still training to get out there. So every year there's a handful of tryouts that come out in the springtime, but there weren't any opportunities to make a move into NFL, CFL, or Arena League.
Yeah, I hear that. It's it's tough. Obviously, only a few guys every year make it out, but that's you still had a great college career. So we'll get into what you're doing now in a little bit, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about today's UCF. I always like to get the perspective of former players. So I mean, UCF since you've left has taken a massive leap. I mean, you had the 17 and 18 undefeated years, obviously beating Auburn. Obviously all the great things that happened from that, multiple coaching changes. And then obviously the biggest thing, UCF moving into the Big 12. As a former player that helped build the fabric of this program and was a big part of one of the best teams in school history, what is that like seeing UCF take that jump from, I mean, you had a jump from Conference USA to American, but seeing us go into the Big 12, one of the, four premier conferences in college football. I mean, what is that like as a former player, knowing you were part of that fabric and seeing that today?
Yeah, man, incredibly proud, man. It's we talk about from the very beginning of this call, it was, hey, when you made your decision, what was the reason why you came to UCF? Being in Conference USA with the potential of bigger conferences on the horizon. Um, from then, and even the guys and the fellas that built the foundation up to where we were when we were playing ball, like to where we are now, man, I'm happy to see it. There's over the years, even when we were playing, there was a lot of conversations about, you got to be in a big conference. You got to be P5. You really got to be able to have wins, solid, qualified wins under your belt to be able to have a shot. And to see where we were from first BCS bid to back to back national champions, like to where we are now, being able to be in the Big 12 and play the teams that once upon a time they said we didn't have a shot to beat, or we didn't have a shot to be on the field with them. And now being able to go out there in the Big 12 and play great ball, like the scoreboard and the records may not reflect all of the good things that came out of the seasons that we've been in the Big 12, but there's a lot of wins. The players that were able to recruit, not only the players, but the coaches that were able to bring in, the caliber of ball that we're able to play. It's like I'm proud to be a Knight. I'm proud to be, rocking the black and gold and having the black and gold run through my veins, because I know that there's a legacy that we've built, that the players before us have built to put us in the position that we're in today. Like it wasn't just like our squad 2011 to 2014 going from 5-7 to BCS bowl wins to seasons that didn't pan out like an 0-12, but like all of those things were building blocks for UCF to be put on the map. And now, not only have we been on the map, now we're continuing to build off of some of the history. And I'm happy to see where we're at, and I'm excited to see where we're going to continue to go with the program.
Before I ask this next question, I'm assuming you still keep up with all the games and watch each game, or at least know what's going on? Okay, cool. So you know obviously UCF got, from 13 to really even 2020 or 2019, UCF fans got really accustomed to winning. I mean, essentially every year was 8+ wins for the most part, outside of maybe 1 or 2 years. And then you've had this kind of lull these last 2 years where, you had the 6 wins in the first year in the Big 12. And then this past year, one of the worst seasons in the last decade. Obviously, much tougher competition, but a 4-win year, we haven't had one of those in a long time. What is it? And I know a lot of people blame Coach Malzahn, and they're obviously he left, and we bring back Frost, but and I know the coaches in college football are super important just with recruiting and everything they do. But what do you think it's going to take for UCF to not necessarily go undefeated again, because that's unrealistic to do that all the time, but what's it going to take to UCF to be like a top dog in the conference again more times than not? There's going to be down years. We all know it. College football sports is cyclical, but what's it going to take to be consistently that like 8, 9, 10 win team that's at least in the running for the conference championship at the end of the year, where they're either in the ship, or they're one game out? What is it going to take to get to that on a consistent level? Because my biggest thing as a UCF fan that's been tough has been there's just a lot of inconsistency until you had that like 5-6 year window from 13 to 7 or 13 to 19. When I was in school from 07, it was like my first year there, we won a conference championship with Kevin Smith. Then we went 4-8. Then we had 9 wins. Then we had the 5 wins. It just kept going back and forth. And that's kind of been UCF's history for the most part. So what will it take to really be consistently getting 8, 9 wins a year?
Yeah, man. The biggest thing is one thing that I loved about UCF is, the culture that we have. Man, you've got Knights fans that really are bleeding black and gold, and they've been since they were kids. And so when you've got that type of fan base that's behind you, the biggest thing I say when it comes to like keeping the consistency, and you're already starting to see that buzz right now with Frost being back. And I feel like that energy that's starting to come back is starting to feel like 17,
Yep.
18. Again, no disrespect or anything towards Malzahn, but I feel like you've got coaches that can come in that can build a culture of of players who are going to fight for the person that's alongside of them. And it starts from the top. And you got to have a coach where they can be a player's coach, they can mesh well with the team, they can lead by example, they are in the know of what's going on. But then there's also the same time of like, there's the hard line in the sand. You're either in or you're out. And one thing that I've seen with a lot of the changes with transfer portal, that wasn't something that we had when I was playing ball. It was like if you transfer, you sat out a year, you had to sit there and wait and make sure that you were going to be eligible to play. And when you made that switch, it was like, this is my second school. I'm sticking around. This is it. And now when you talk about consistency, cohesiveness, you got to have that consistency from your team. You got to have consistency from the players that are going to step in and make the commitment to that school, where through lumps, through bruises, through trials and tribulations, like at the end of the day, it's like, you are my brother. This is my team. And that's how we continue to build that legacy. I'm proud to say that I came to UCF because Coach O'Leary put his hand out and said, if you shake my hand, you're making a gentleman's commit that you're going to commit to UCF. I'm going to guarantee that you're going to graduate. Everything else we'll figure out. Okay. That was my commitment to him. That was my commitment to the team. That was my commitment to UCF, to where it is still today, where now to continue to keep that consistency, you got to have guys when they come in, whether they're transferring in, whether they're coming in from high school, coming in from JUCO, like you got to be fully bought into the program and to what your coach has set forth for the team. And sometimes if you can't get with that, then it'll reflect on the field. It'll reflect in your records. And I'm not saying like that's what the reason was behind, some of the recent seasons and where we haven't been where we need to be. But I feel like when it comes to consistency, you got to have guys that are all bought in to the program. Whether, you go 4-4-8 or you go 12-1, because you're going to continue to, build out that program to what you want it to be, because there's a legacy that's behind that.
You said there's the buy-in, and I think under Frost, it feels like these players are going to really buy in again. It feels like the fan base is going to buy in. Like, we may be living off some of that Frost hype from those 2 years that he was here, but I think once he became an option, and it was even floated out there in the universe that the rumors started to come out, like he kind of became the only option at that point. It was just like it had to happen. Like anything else would have been a letdown. So, I don't know if he caught lightning in a bottle the first time, because he had a lot of great players from O'Leary's teams. But I am confident in what he can do, and I am really excited. Like you, I think the buy-in is going to be there again. So that's going to be really exciting to see the future of UCF, and it may take a couple of years to build, but I think that is there. So let's get into a little bit about your current situation. I know that you obviously have you told us a little bit about what you did right after you graduated from UCF, but now you've launched a new business called Tag Team Works, which is a platform that's dedicated to helping athletes transition from sports to professional careers, which I think is a really really powerful thing, because I think I'm not an athlete, but I've been around a lot of athletes working for the Dolphins and being in sports and just everything I do here with UCF. I don't know what the percentage is, but whatever it is that makes the league, whatever 1% of college or whatever it is, 5%. There's that other 90-95% that have to ultimately find careers that are not on the field. So tell us a little bit about this company, and who, what you're trying to build, who your clients are, how you help them, and just a little bit about it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, man, I'm super passionate about it because, it's coming from experience, and it's coming from experience that I know a lot, as you said, 1 to 3% to professional sports after you graduate, from college, or even just, when the percentage gets even lower for high school to college, like
Yeah.
you're having something that you built your whole life around, and that some point, no matter what level, it's going to end.
Yep.
And so
At a
once
young age too.
at a young age too. And so when you get to that point, you know, the next step is a little unknown. And, I kind of walked back to, once I graduated and I went into sales. After going into sales, I worked at a freight and logistics company, driving a box truck to and from, lighting companies. That was a place that I was at. And I actually got a phone call from my old linebacker coach, Coach Summers, Tyson Summers, and he was going out to Georgia Southern to be the head coach back in 2016. And so he brought me on as a graduate assistant out there to work with the team. So I was on the sideline, going to all the games, going through film study with the players. So, redeveloped a passion for being around the game and coaching. And after coaching there for a year, my wife and I got married. I came back to Orlando, where we had our home, and I started coaching high school football at Oak Ridge High School. And I was there for 3 years as a substitute teacher, coaching ball, still figuring it out. Like, there was no answer to what my next step would be. And after I stopped coaching at Oak Ridge, I actually started working for a staffing and recruiting company. And that's where I've been for the past 6 years is, staffing, helping companies identify top talent in the local market, depending on their positions, and being able to be a resource to help those who are looking for an opportunity, but they don't have the necessary steps to get there. And so that's where we come in as an organization, where we would help individuals transition into the workforce. And the reason I tell you all of this is because I learned through my staffing and my recruiting at my company that there's a gap that companies look for, and that's leadership, that's discipline, that's being punctual. And those are skills that sometimes can't necessarily be taught in a book. And so that was one of the reasons why, I started Tag Team Works. It kind of came from a vision of, once I graduated, I needed somebody to lead me into the next step, whether that's through networking, whether that's through mentorship. And that was what helped me kind of spark the idea of creating Tag Team Works, and just to bridge the gap from once you are concluded with sports to transitioning into the workforce. Here's a platform that is able to assist you through networking, through career transition resources, such as typing tests, how to build a resume, what's a career explorer, what is my next career. These are all my attributes that I've learned from sports, but how do I apply them? And if this is your very first job or your first time stepping out into the workforce, who is going to be able to speak on my behalf? You got your teammates that can speak on your behalf, but you also got coaches who are your professionals, who are your managers and your the bosses who can also speak on your behalf. So that was the reason why I started this company, is to be able to provide a place where athletes can go to network with other athletes, find former teammates, and to really get into their next step of their career through assistance. So yeah, man, that's the reason why I started the company, a little background about it, and how we can continue to work with our employers to bring that top talent and those former athletes into the workforce.
Says work, is it like you talked about, they can meet with their former teammates and things like that? Is there like different chapters around the country? Is it online? And then is it typically always post college grads, or is it also like after high school? Like who and how do they get connected? How do they kind of join the platform? Is it like they just sign up for free online, or just talk about that process?
Yeah, of course. So it is a website, an app coming soon this year. But what it is you can go to the website, www.tagteamworks.com. Once you get to the site, you can join the team. Pretty much you're able to sign up, create an account. It'll ask questions around, your professional experience, if you have professional experience, your athletic experience, your degree, if you've received a degree or still pending or working towards that. And then once you're actually in the website, once you've created a profile, you're able to, very similar to LinkedIn and Instagram, you can post about your career. You can direct message other players. And it's not only for former student athletes who are in the collegiate space, it's for any former student athlete, whether you graduated high school and you were a star baseball player, and then you weren't able to find an opportunity for a college, and so you got into the workforce. This is a place where you can connect with other people who are in the same shoes. Whether it's college and you graduated and professional sports wasn't on the docket for you, you can go here to find employers who are looking for your skill. Even for semi-professional players, like I know for semi-pros, arena, CFL, there's times where in the off season, you're continuing to train, you're continuing to work, build up, your stamina and working out, and to find that supplemental income. You can find a place to have a part-time job, and that's what we're able to provide. Is you can come to our site, find a part-time position where you can continue to work, get that supplemental income, still be able to train and grind. So then once you're back in, your respective sport, you're not having to worry about, what's next.
Another question on that is, so You explained kind of how the athlete themselves can go on the platform and join and find all those opportunities. What about the employers? Is it the same method for them? Do they kind of come to the site and add their openings and things like that? And is there specific industries that are, you're looking for, or is it anything from like a plumber to electrician to whatever, something in business, or is it all kind of professions are open, or how does it work there?
Yeah. And yeah, for employers, so what they're able to do is they're able to sign up and join the exact same way. Now, they're once they're actually in the platform and on the website, their side is going to look a little different from what the athletes are able to see. Because
Right.
what I have for athletes is 100% free. There's no payment. There's there's nothing that you have to do except sign up and continue like and start building your network, start reaching out to people. But for the employers, their dashboard and what their side looks like, they're able to post jobs at a fee, whether they're posting one job or they're posting hundreds of jobs. And it can be in any profession. If somebody needs to hire someone and they know that there's a talent pool of former athletes that can fill that gap, they can post their jobs. So currently we've got 110 jobs that are posted right now from a number of different places and a number of different companies. And so for those employers, once they actually get signed in, depending on the level of membership that they have, whether it's a starter membership where you're able to have one job posting and get limited access to viewing athlete profiles, to the pro level where you're able to post 3 to 5 job postings per month and get a little bit more intel on some of the athletes that are actually on the website. It's a Hall of Fame where you got full access. You can filter, you can find, all right, I'm looking for an athlete that played college baseball. They're able to filter that and find a number of qualified individuals who were former collegiate baseball players and reach out to them. And athletes are able to, join specific groups or follow company pages, or even if at the end of the day they want to apply for a job, they're able to apply to the jobs that these employers have posted.
It sounds like it's basically like almost like a LinkedIn specifically for former athletes in a sense.
Exactly, exactly.
No, that's a great cause. So, just to reiterate, everyone that's listening to this podcast, tagteamworks.com is the website. If you're an employer, you could post your job openings on there, and athletes, you can join completely for free on tagteamworks.com. And you guys also, are you on social media or anything like that?
Yes, sir. So we've got all social media platforms. Everything is Tag Team Works. So if you're going to Instagram at tagteamworks.com, make sure you got the S on there. Same thing with Twitter X, Tag Team Works, Facebook, any platform that's under the sun. And if I miss one, just let me know so I can make sure I can go sign up and create a page
What
for
about
it.
Blue Sky?
There we go. Need to add that one. So, um, yeah, man, we're trying to really bridge that gap because there are so many individuals out there that are looking for their next step and need that assistance to get there. And we just want to be, if not the one-stop shop, at least the stepping stone to continue to get you where you want to be. So I'm always open to talk to anybody, whether it's a former player, an employer looking to hire, or anybody in between. We've got some future plans for the under 18 youth, high school, middle school, elementary. Plan to be able to have a Tag Team Works Junior so that they're able to not only segue into the next step once they graduate high school, but even creating an alumni program and mentorship program where juniors and some of our senior folks are able to partner together.
Awesome. Well, sounds like an awesome cause, and I mean, really a resource that I think is needed for a lot of athletes. Because like I said, when I talk to athletes, I think a lot of athletes once they, whether they're done after high school or after college or even after the pros, you kind of lose that structure. And, I think a lot of athletes, one of the biggest things they miss is that camaraderie in the locker room. And, like you said, a lot of athletes revolve their whole life around the athletics, the sport that they're in. So to have a resource like this, I think is excellent. So tagteamworks.com is the site, on every major social media platform with the same name, Tag Team Works. So Troy, appreciate you telling us a little bit about Tag Team Works. Want to finish up with a few more questions. I'll have one more kind of long form question, and the rest will just kind of be kind of rapid fire, kind of
Right.
fun questions, if that's all right with you.
Good with it, man.
All right, cool. So one thing I always find fascinating, players that played in your era versus players that play now, is the whole NIL and transfer portal that we're seeing now. And I know a lot of former athletes are probably mad that they did not get that, that NIL money, and I get it. And I've always been for athletes making their money. I think of like an example like Johnny Manziel, like getting in trouble for signing autographs, or whoever it is, whether it's Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, whatever. It's ridiculous that if someone's willing to pay you to sign an autograph, you shouldn't be in trouble for that. But I think
Right.
we've gone from so strict to so like the other side, wild, wild west, whatever you want to call it. I feel like it's stripped a little bit of the charm of college football. I mean, college football is my favorite sport. Obviously, as you could tell, I wouldn't have this podcast if not. But between that and then the regionality dying with the transition of a team like Oregon playing in the Big Ten, or whatever the case may be, just these, or Cal playing in the ACC, it's just ridiculous. Between that, the transfer portal, the NIL, to me, it stripped a little bit of the charm of college football, or maybe that's a goofy word, whatever you want to call it. But what is your thoughts on NIL, the transfer portal? Obviously, I'm sure you're for players getting paid, as I am too, but just the system as it is currently now, where it's gone to this other side, how do you feel about it?
And so funny enough, when I was at UCF, one of the papers that I wrote was about, student athletes being able to receive pay. And, there's a lot of things that go into our scholarships that, are taken care of, but at the end of the day, it's not substantial enough to, day in and day out, pay for certain things. And so I've always thought and pushed for athletes to be able to be paid. And now, over the past couple of years, it's slowly gone from, hey, we're going to talk about the athletes getting paid, to yes, the athletes are going to get paid. Now there's certain deals. When you're starting to talk to NIL and thinking about, players who are in positions where now they are starting to receive, enormous amounts of money that they've
More
never
than
seen
NFL players
before,
in some
more than
cases.
NFL players. And I know we talk about a lot about like financial literacy and being able to use money the right way. Sometimes you might not be able to get to that point if you've just got tons of money in front of you. So it has gone off the rails. And I can say that from just the transitions over the past couple of years when it comes to NIL deals. And yes, there are some that are deserving. There are great things where I've seen car dealerships be able to give players loans for a car so that they're able to get from point A to point B, because maybe they never been able to have their own car, dealing on their situation. And so like there are a lot of great things from NIL that have transferred to where we are today, but then there's also a space where it's getting out of hand, where it's not regulated. There's people who are receiving money or signing deals without understanding the full scope of what goes into that specific deal for NIL. And for the transfer portal, I kind of alluded to it earlier where, when you would transfer, you'd get one school or you'd go from JUCO and you wouldn't have to sit out a year before you can move to your next school. So you're getting that buy-in from players, and they're sticking around for years to come. And where we are now, where it's one school to the next school to the next school, and it even starts in high school now.
You could
High
transfer
school
and unlimited in high school now too. It's crazy.
transfer unlimited. And I mean, I remember when I was in high school, it was like if you weren't living in that zip code or in that school zone, you weren't going to any other school. That was your school. And so now you go from high school to high school to high school to college to another college to another college. As a coach, when I've coached in the past and knowing about what coaches look for in their players, the number one thing I say is commitment over leadership, over all those. You can have a great leader and they can be out the door the next day. You can have a hard-nosed football player or a D lineman that can run through anybody, but if they're not fully committed to you, your program, and the ideals that you have set in front of you for your school, then you are dealing with the wild, wild west. And now it's hard for professional teams who are essentially competing with college teams in terms of pay to say, we've got this individual who's transferred 2 or 3 times in high school, 3 or 4 times in college, and we want them to go all out and be committed to our team. Obviously, that's the goal, for the next step for all collegiate athletes. But it has turned into a place where you can go anywhere for any amount of money, and I love that players are getting paid. And I love for players who are able to get the opportunity to transfer to another school because maybe they didn't have, the playing time that they wanted to get, but they have been at the school for a couple of years and now this is their opportunity. I've put in the work. I want to explore at a smaller school. Like I think for individuals like that, that's where the transfer portal is great. And for JUCO
Right.
players to be able to transition in, I think that's where the transfer portal is great. But then there's the other side of it where it's a little out of hand.
One follow-up question on that, like the word loyalty in sports, it gets like it's just it's eroded, but it's also it's BS because fans get mad at players in any sport. I don't mean just college football, NBA, NFL, and they'll say loyalty, and then players will kind of be like that's BS because a coach will leave at any point or whatever the case may be. So I don't think loyalty is the right word, but I'll say pro is a different ball game. You're getting $100 million contracts and you can get traded at any time. Or obviously in college you can't get traded. But college specifically, I always felt there's a difference. Like I always say, like for example, I grew up in South Florida, so I'm a Heat and a Dolphins fan. But the only thing that connects me to the Heat and the Dolphins is that I live down here, right? That's it. There's no real connection other than that. Whereas at college, I went there. I met my wife there. I spent money there. I grew up there basically. So there's a true like that's why college football is my favorite sport and why UCF is my favorite team is because there's a true connection there. I feel like it's almost like a blood connection compared to a pro sports franchise. Don't get me wrong, they have rabid loyal fan bases and it's a real fan base, but college to me is just on a different level because when you could say I went there, it just feels like a different connection. So when you now have guys, and don't want to pick on Dylan Gabriel, but first example comes to mind, he goes to UCF, then he transfers to UCLA for 1 second, then goes to Oklahoma, and then goes to Oregon. I guess and I'm all for, like you said, there's examples where the transfer portal is really good, but does that like I guess erode that like that loyalty is not the right word, but does that erode that like just that connection you can have with a school? Because if you're gonna like if we sign all these guys and whatever and they're just gone in a year, gone in 2 years, where's that how do you kind of I guess reconcile that with like being like how you and I feel about UCF, how can that really exist when you have a thing where you could just transfer year after year after year? Because my thing is too, what I keep saying about the portal, what I don't like about it is if we're going to treat college like the pros where you get contracts and all that, there's got to be a term that it can't just be a year. Like if we're gonna do it, it's just like I always use a stupid example, like it's like tomorrow if Patrick Mahomes can't just be like 4 games in the season. You know what? I'm not feeling the Chiefs anymore. I'm just gonna dip out to the next team. It doesn't work like that because you're under contract. So how do you kind of reconcile? Is there a happy medium? Maybe you sign a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, and is how we feel about a school like UCF, is that dead for players basically?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's dead. I think we're just in a time right now where a lot of things that players have been asking for over decades has finally come to fruition with the NILs, players being able to get paid, with transfer portal, being able to have that opportunity to make that transfer if you want to. With that, all of that happened within, you know, let's just say within a decade. I mean, it's been more than a decade since I've been out of the game. So all of that has happened within the past couple of years, and it's to a point where we don't there aren't any regulations. There's no terms, there's agreements that are in place for certain deals and certain transfers, and you get the handshakes for some of these deals. But right now, I don't think we're in that place of having that bleeding black and gold unless you are sticking with that team through the ups, through the downs. You can transfer to another school, go win you a national championship, not be in a place that you want to be because you don't got play time, and then go transfer to another school. It's like, well, isn't the goal to be on the team to get you to the national championship? Or is your goal to be on the team because is it money? Is it because you want to be around your brothers? Is it because of the loyalty? There's so many different things that are up in the air, I feel, right now over the past couple of years with these changes that have happened with NIL deals, with the transfer portal. I think to get back to that place of, you know, taking the charm away, as you said, like we've taken the charm away from college sports because of some of these things. And not all of it is bad. Like not all of it is bad, but I would say that the rules and how to make sure we're getting the buy-in from the players and not just because of a check or because you're going somewhere because you want to be first string, not playtime, just want to be first string. Those are things that I think need to be fixed for us to get back to that place of being wholeheartedly, I'm in it. I went to UCF. I got my degree. I played all 4 years there. I found my wife. I kept my roots here in Orlando because I love Orlando so much. I haven't been to any other school, and I've seen other schools, but I want to be here because this is where I laid down a lot on the field, and I played around a lot of players who are still here in Orlando, and I've got a fan base that has been behind me since I graduated and since I've played. I want to stay home. And that's the biggest thing. I feel like this is home. And the school that you went to it should feel that way. And for Dylan, like he came here, played his ass off, did a lot of great things. And I feel like we patted him on the back. Obviously you want to keep your players home as a fan base. And for the players, you at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you because once things are concluded, it's going to be you that's continuing to move along day to day. But for him, I mean, everything that he's been able to accomplish at UCF since leaving UCF and where he's going to continue to go, I think is awesome for him. I feel like for where we want to go to get that charm back is that there needs to be some things in place that we haven't got in place yet. And I hope that it comes soon, but still being able to have players get the things that they want. Um, give the fans what they need as well.
But you've had some awesome, responses, and I appreciate all your insight. So I'm just gonna do rapid fire here, fun questions. I mean, don't have to answer in one word if you want to go off and talk about it a little bit, but these are just kind of more fun questions as it relates to UCF. So, all right, first off, put you on the spot. What's your best George O'Leary story? Because everyone's got a George O'Leary story, so I got to hear it.
Man.
There might be
Um,
some that you can't tell the public, but maybe there's some that it's like it's all right to tell the public, you know?
yeah. Um, let's see. I mean, on the spot with it, I'll keep it to me personally. So
Yeah, yeah.
you know, one time, so Coach O'Leary is very punctual, and it's carried on into where I am today. Like, I'm on time. If you look, if you're early, you are on time. If you're on time, you're late. Like, I remember having meetings where they would start at 7:30, or they were supposed to start at 7:30, but the meeting would be underway at 7:15. So making sure that you're being on time. I showed up to a team meeting, or actually it was a special teams meeting at 7 o'clock, ready for our 7:15, 7:30 meeting. It had already started. And I'm sitting outside, the door's closed. I see Coach O'Leary looking at me, and the team meeting was next after that. And so during that team meeting, he goes, Where's Gray? Where's Gray? I'm like, right here, coach. Stand up. What's going on, coach? It's like, well, you were late for the meeting earlier today. And go clear out your locker. I'm like, wait, whoa, 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 whoa,
Whoa,
whoa. What are you talking about, coach? Go clear out your locker. You're late. Everybody's shocked. And
being
what?
late?
Just for being late, right? So I go start to clear out my locker. He calls me into the
Are you
office.
freaking out inside right now?
Oh,
Like, yeah,
I was ready to call my mom. Like, hey, I think I have to come home. I think I gotta
right.
come home. And he brought me into his office. And one thing about Coach O'Leary is that, you know, he is he is stern. He is going to get the job done. But he is somebody who, behind closed doors, once you have a conversation with him, he's very real. And that situation where the reason I say it was funny because I literally thought I was going home and I thought I was off the team. He's taught me. He said, "Hey, look, you need to be on time. There are a lot of guys in the locker room. There are a lot of guys on this team that follow our leaders that need to be on time." So you were good, but that was an example that needed to be set. And I was early every single time after that, and there were a lot of guys who did the exact same thing because they didn't want to be put in that position. But man, yeah, I thought I was going home. I was ready to call my mom.
So I guess you learned a lesson. Like you said, you were never late again after that,
Oh
right?
no. Oh no. No, 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 no.
And
No.
O'Leary's known as a hard ass. Like everyone's got one of those stories. Like whether it's like your appearance or something like that. I know, but I think a lot of guys I talked to that played under O'Leary, and actually most of the guys I've had on this podcast were O'Leary guys. I've talked to a couple, Frost guys and Hypo guys, but for the most part, everyone's kind of like in the long run, they kind of appreciated how O'Leary was as a coach because, like, he's going to give it to you straight and he's going to be fair, but he's going to be tough. So I think you just
Yeah.
alluded to that basically. So, all right, here we go. All right, favorite restaurant on either on UCF's campus or around Orlando when you were in town?
Ooh.
Is it like a
So we
Hugh
had
Magoo's type of situation or like
see, I loved Huey Magoo's, but man, the best tenders, hands down, is when we would fly out for our games and we would get them. Oh my gosh, what's the name of that place?
what the tenders you're saying?
Yeah, the chicken tenders. It wasn't from Huey Magoo's.
PDQ
Uh-uh.
or no?
It's a place in Sanford. Hold on.
I didn't go into the Sanford too much, so I wish I could help you out there, but I don't.
Oh man.
There wasn't one on campus though, right?
No, so Huey Magoo's was our on campus
Right,
go-to.
right, right.
Yeah. And then we used to have Kyoto that was right across the
Oh
street.
yeah, Kyoto
Yeah,
for sure.
Kyoto was good. Lee's chicken tenders.
Okay, I don't think I've heard of it, but I like it.
Man, Lee's chicken tenders, we'd always talk about the Lee's chicken tender box because we would be excited for it. Just get on the plane and you had a box of chicken tenders, mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, some greens, all to get prepared for your game. But on campus, definitely like Hugh Magoo's, but if it was something nearby, it'd have to be Kyoto or just going over the subway.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. Funniest guy on the team, and I'll from your era, I usually get two responses almost every single time. So I'm curious to hear who was the funniest guy on the team in your era.
Cedric Thompson.
Really, I have not heard that yet. Okay, okay. Cedric
Yeah,
Thompson.
Said Thompson played running back
Yeah, I
in the
remember
second,
him.
and
Did he play
yeah,
defense too, or was it just running back?
just running back, special teams.
Special teams. Okay.
Yeah, special teams. But yeah, I mean, there was never a time that USC said and you weren't laughing. Like whether it was in study hall, whether it was in film, whether it was in class, like doing the right things, but just hilarious. So yeah, said.
So he was the guy that he was the class clown per se. All
Yeah, yeah.
right.
But I want to hear the other two.
So you know what? Maybe this is a little past. So I always hear maybe it's a little bit. Jemias Pittman was
Yeah.
he? Yeah, everyone says Pittman. Like everyone, I'm drawing the blank on the second one, but I'm telling you, I've had 10 of these podcasts. You go back more, everyone has said Jemias Pittman. Like everyone has said him. I'm trying to think, there's one other drawing a blank now. I can't remember. I'll have to go back and look, but everyone's saying Pittman always had them
Yeah.
in stitches all the time. So was he put, I guess was he on the team when you were there? I know he
He was
was like
I think my junior and senior year. He was there, or he was, yeah, junior and senior year. But
okay, yeah,
I
everyone
know
says
Pitt.
Pitt.
No, I know Pitt well, man. Pitt is yeah, Georgia kid and hilarious, man. He's yeah, nonstop. I mean, even when I saw him, I think it was last year or year before last at one of the games. I'm like, Pitt, what's up, man? Jordan. He ran over, picked me up. I'm like, come on, man. I'm getting old. He can't
You
pick me up
can't do
off the
that.
ground. But yeah, Pitt's
Yeah,
good dude.
everyone said him. There was one other guy I'm trying to blank out. I know he's on my last podcast. I'll get back to you on that one, but everyone says
Yeah.
Pitt for sure. All right, so who was the toughest guy you went up against, offensive wise, because you're on defense in practice, like a UCF guy that you have. Who was the toughest guy, whether it was, a running back or a receiver, tight end, who was that guy?
Yeah. There's been a handful of guys that, playing against like Rashad having to, guard him one-on-one on a go route. And my hamstring's about to explode just trying to keep up with him. But I'd say Speedy,
Yeah.
Rennell Hall, because he's super shifty. Um, he was a buck 80, buck 90 when he played wide receiver, but he was physical, shifty, could move. He played in the slot, reverse, whatever the case was. And being like an outside linebacker, I was either on him or I would have to move out, to him on, outside the box. But yeah, Speedy was tough to not only guard, tackle, he just played angry. And that's what made him who he was as a player, offensively. And I'll give an honorable mention to Latavius Murray. It was
That makes
probably
sense.
it's
He's
probably
huge.
another one, man. As a true freshman, we had tackling drills, and they were like, "Hey, you got Latavius. I'm like, him? Him. All right, let's get to work. And but he was solid. He was a brick.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm thinking like maybe I haven't interviewed too many linebackers because I'm thinking like I've heard a lot of guys like DBs, I guess they'll say receivers, certain receivers, but I've heard, a lot of like D linemen will say certain offensive linemen. I've heard like Aaron Evans, a couple guys, and then on offense, a lot of the guys, I guess is a little bit past your era, but like a lot of the offensive guys will say Kyle Gibson,
Yeah.
who
Oh
was
yeah. Yeah.
DB.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they always say he was like 175, 180 pounds soaking wet, but they said he hit harder like than anyone they know what regardless of your weight and all that stuff. So it's always interesting to hear those answers because you like, when you're watching it on TV, you can't really tell how, I mean, unless it's a crazy hit, it's hard to tell how hard the hit was, but they're saying no, like he hit like,
Oh yeah.
crazy. Or you'll hear a lot of guys that are like, you know, they'll say Adrian Killens not because like he's gonna hit you hard, just because he's gonna burn you and it's just
Yeah.
embarrassing, like,
Yeah. Now
so
Gibson, man, Kyle, yeah, he was one. He was hard nosed. Like when you talk about somebody who plays 100 miles per hour, like that's him.
yeah,
There's no ifs, ands, buts. No, hey, look, we're gonna shadow. We're gonna just, we're gonna tag somebody off. I'm here to play ball, coach, and that was his mentality, and that's why he was able to step on the field and do what he did. Um, him, Shaquille, Keem, all of them had that mentality, and that's the UCF way. Like you play 100
for
miles per
sure.
hour, and practice was harder than the games. So, uh,
That's
yeah,
why we
man,
win games, right?
100%.
All right, final question. I'll get you out of here. I know I already know the answer to this question, but I gotta ask it. Is, pound for pound, who's the better team? Is it 2013 or is it 2017?
Like you said, the answer. This will be a conversation that will last a long, long, long time. Yeah, man. 2013, stepping on the field, we got it. You talk about points. Can't get in the end zone. Not worried about speed, but man, I have so much respect for 2017 squad. Everybody, offensive, defensively, coaching squad. A lot of the guys that I wrapped up playing ball with when I was a senior were, moving towards junior, senior year of the 2017 squad. So a lot of what they learned in their legacy is from our squad, but they were able to do it big, do it better because of some of the foundation that we were able to lay, and then they laid that foundation for the teams to follow. But 2013 got it all the way, my man.
Yeah, man. I'm always, like I've every person I've ever asked from 2017 has said 2017. Every person I've asked from 2013 has said 2013. I'm always curious. There's me that one guy that, maybe he's like a practice squad guy that's just like, hey, look, I didn't play, but I'm just going to tell you this team's better than that team. But we'll see if that ever happens one day if someone gives another response. But I respect you for, sticking out for 2013. That was when my last year in school. So, that will always hold a special, place in my heart. So, hey, man, Troy, appreciate you coming on. That was a lot of fun, and I appreciate all your insight. And, anytime you want to get back on the show, let me know. And, thank you again.
100%. Yeah, we'll be back soon. I appreciate you. UCF Football Updates, man. Major, major, major for the community, man. I really do. I wanted to, before we jump off, I just wanted to give you some credit. I have been following you for years, your page, from a couple hundred to thousand to
Yeah,
thousands of followers. And even just talking to people in the community that follow the page and hey man, I saw your name pop up on UCF football updates. Did you see who just transferred over? No, I didn't. I didn't see any media outlet post. Oh, man, you got to go check the updates. So I really wanted just to not only give you credit for what you're doing for UCF football updates and letting everybody know what we're doing, not only local to the community, but across the country, across the world sometimes, is big, man. And also to be able to give, former players like myself, I've seen a lot of players 2013, 2017, even before that with Israel, like being able to give us a platform to talk about some of our experiences on the field, since the field, and man, just thank you for that. I appreciate you. Continue to do some great work. Continue to bring the players on, and big season ahead of us, and looking forward to everything that you're going to continue to post.
Absolutely, man. No, that means a lot, especially coming from UCF legend. Appreciate that all day. So I will continue to it, and just so everyone remembers, Troy's platform is Tag Team Works. That's Tag Team Works with an S.com. I looked it up. He's on Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, all under the same banner, which is Tag Team Works. The website, once again, is tagteamworks.com. Their email address is info@tagteamworks. And with that being said, that's a wrap on another episode of the UCF Football Updates podcast. Big thanks to Troy Gray for joining us and sharing his journey as a Knight. Always great to hear from former players who made an impact on the field as well as off the field. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, UCF.footballupdates. Thanks for tuning, and as always, charge on. Go Knights, charge on.
Well, nice. Charge on.